6, a helping hand with your land.
Bill from Essex here, out to do some snow clearing today. We just had a nice big storm last night, got about a foot of snow on the ground, and clearing the snow out here from around the dealership is kind of like a sport, right? Everybody loves to get out of different pieces of equipment and see what we can find in order to clear the parking lot. I'm gonna put myself through a little bit of extra punishment here today and do this on a gear drive tractor. Now, I don't often look back on some of the videos that I've done and regret things at all, but there was one here a little while ago, about 6 months ago, showing the difference between a hydrostatic tractor and a gear drive tractor and its pulling performance. There were a couple of things wrong with the test that I did, and I fully was aware of that. But I thought, you know, while there were problems with the test, for what it was for those two tractors, comparing them in that specific scenario, I felt like the results were valid. And they absolutely were. I posted the video, it's still there. I'll link to it if you want to see it. But more or less it was showing that there's a big difference in the ability of a gear drive tractor to pull and put power to the ground compared to a hydrostatic. And that particular test came up with some really dramatic results. Now, a bunch of you were complaining about the fact that I did it in high range, and that was done because I didn't want the tractor to break traction. And that's what we're going to show when we're out here working today, is that yes, in theory, a hydrostatic can't pull as hard as what a gear drive can, but that's really just in theory. The ability for you to actually put that power to the ground is what's really important. And any one of these tractors, regardless of your transmission selection, is generally going to run out of traction and the ability to put power to the ground long before the transmission is going to run out of power. So just the sheer fact that one can pull and push more than the other doesn't actually make it that much more functional. And when you come to things like what I'm doing here today, out clearing snow in a parking lot, I'm making this more difficult than I need to by using a gear drive tractor, right? Now this one fortunately has a nice shuttle on it, so I could change directions pretty easily, but all of my speed selection and directional changes involve me going on and off the clutch here and having to stop and shift gears, and I don't get as much flexibility in my speed as if I was doing this with a hydrostatic. And out here in these snowy conditions, it doesn't matter which one of these tractors can push more, right? It's all about being able to put that power to the ground. And that's going to be driven more by my tire selection and whether I've got chains on and how icy the ground is today. It makes not a lick of difference what transmission that I chose for my tractor when it comes to how big of a pile of snow I'm going to get out in front of me here, because again, I'm losing traction long before any of these transmission options run out of power. So if you were gauging your transmission selection on this task here today, you know, I can go through and I could do this with a gear drive tractor, and this is fine, I'm getting by. But fundamentally, this is way better done by a tractor with a hydrostatic, where I can shuttle my directions that much more quickly, and I'm not on and off the clutch every time I need to come to a stop up here and go back and forth. It makes the process of doing this much more fatiguing and not quite as fun, which really, if you're lucky enough to live in a snow area like this, clearing snow is fun. Clearing snow is one of those things that does take a little bit of time to get used to the technique. You'll find a lot of kind of more rookie tractor operators, when they get onto these things, struggle with this a little bit, and that's usually in keeping their front tires down on the ground. When you go and you want to scrape something clean, you're usually kind of programmed to go up and drop your loader down, pop it into float so that you get that bucket's cutting edge down on the ground, and then start to drive forward. If you drive forward with your bucket down in the float position, you're going to hit a point here where the loader pushes back into the tractor and starts to pick your front tires up off the ground. So when you watch me shuttle back and forth here, one of the things that I'm doing, besides grinding the gears, is I use the float position in order to drop my loader down to the ground and have the cutting edge hit the asphalt. But before I start pushing forward, I just pop it out of float, and that keeps that loader from pushing back into the tractor and picking my wheels up so that I'm maintaining traction. One of the things that you'll notice here in the equipment business is that things like this transmission selection that we're talking about are highly regional. Different parts of the country buy different transmissions and different kinds of tractors than other parts of the country do. And snow is going to be one of the drivers of that, right? We're primarily here in the Northeast selling hydrostatic tractors. For us, at least in this under 75 horsepower, when you're out of utility tractors, gear drives might be 1 in 30 for us, right? It is predominantly hydrostatic, and snow like this is one of the reasons why. We don't get a huge amount of snow here, but we get enough that you're out doing this kind of work a handful of times every winter. And there's no doubt about it that, you know, being out and doing this work on a gear drive tractor like this is just not, I could do it, but okay, like right here, I'm trying to work in a tight area and I gotta slide the clutch back and forth and creep the thing forward, and, you know, just certainly takes a lot more effort and a lot more care. I'd be able to do this with a hydrostatic much more quickly and fly around in a way that I just can't quite manage here with gears. But I'll tell you, gears or no gears, I love doing this. This is, getting out and pushing snow is like the height of tractor therapy for me, right? There's just something extremely satisfying about getting out here and taking a parking lot covered with snow and shuttling back and forth out here and getting it nice and clean. So that's a little bit of the work that I'm out here doing with the tractor today, running back and forth in this gear drive machine, clearing this parking lot off. And just to summarize too, when we go through this transmission conversation, right? And even when you start talking about all kinds of specifications on your equipment, we're all programmed to look for the biggest numbers possible, right? To go through on that spec sheet and choose the model that gives us the biggest numbers, because that's going to be the best tractor. And really, at the end of the day, you're missing so much of the greater picture of operating a piece of equipment when you look at things that way. Things like having something that's nice to operate, that's ergonomically correct, that has features like skid steer couplers that take away from that theoretical lift capacity but give you so much flexibility. Big numbers are a very simplistic way to look at this equipment, and being able to sit down and understand operationally what they're like when it comes to manipulating loaders and driving transmissions and that kind of stuff is going to help you make a much better purchase decision. And for guys like myself, you know, this is where we come in as salespeople. If you're new to equipment and machinery and that kind of thing, you need to have the advice from somebody who's run the equipment before and understands the best applications for it to guide you through that process. So while I understand the times where we would much rather like do the research and understand the machines ourselves and not rely on somebody else when it comes to things like this, the expertise of somebody who's actually been out and run the equipment before can be incredibly valuable to making sure that you have the right machine for the jobs that you have. So if you're going through the buying process, or if you have parts or service needs for machines you've already got, give us a call at Messick's. We're available at 800-222-3373 or online at messick's.com.